Hey everybody, welcome to another Star Trek Thursday. I'm Matt and I'm here along with
Often wrong, John.
Often Wrong John. Oh,
It kind of a forced rhyme, wrong, John.
no. Well, forced. Actually, no, you said forced. You're right. Either way, we are doing by the way, we've rebranded, John. I don't know if you noticed this because we're doing this in advance, but John, well, first of all, we're talking about Datalore and the Angel ones. But we're rebranding. We're obviously still doing these on Star Trek Thursday, so they will come out on Thursdays whenever we get the chance to. But the new name of our podcast, and yes, we took a little bit to find our groove, just like the first season of The Next Generation. But we are calling ourselves What the Trek. So that is what we will be on major podcast platforms. I don't know how you're listening to this right now, either through our YouTube channel, Those Guys on the Radio, or through our Podbean, which is also Those Guys on the Radio. But yeah, so we're going to be What the Trek from now on. John, how do you feel about this
Works for
announcement?
me.
Is it better than these two episodes?
I would say so. I would say so. The bar isn't exactly stratospheric with that on that front,
It's
but
non
yes, it
existent.
definitely is.
It's just non existent. So yeah, we're talking about Datalore first. But I don't get me wrong, everyone. Both of these episodes were equally terrible. I don't want to pick between my two children, but um, both of these were. I don't say actually no, maybe not equally. I think maybe we'll get to it a little bit later. But I will say that starting off with Datalore, this one was not as bad as you initially led me to believe, but that in no way means that it's like a masterpiece or anything like that, especially after the big goodbye. John, what are your thoughts before I ramble on?
So as far as the episode goes, it kind of evens out. I think they broke even and still did a little bit better. Besides, because okay, the script is atrocious. The writing is really bad. The
Yeah.
characterization is wonky, even for a first season episode. But seeing Brent Spiner play against himself and juggle the two roles was a treat.
Yes, very much
And
so.
and it did pave the way. Like I said, it gets better. He's playing two characters in this one. Just sit tight and we'll see what he can do with that in some later episodes. But that really is worth it alone, is just for that, because he's just such a talented actor and manages to, like I said, not only play two characters in the same episode, but two characters in the same room,
Yes.
interacting with each other. So yeah, so that really is we get a very early indication of Brent Spiner's potential, which, like I said, we'll get to see that as time goes on. But yeah, very very exciting. But yeah, the script, the actual dialogue is just awful. Like I remember there's one part where Data and Laura are talking about Wesley, and then what Data meant was that Wesley is smart beyond his years, but it's almost like they were saying, "Hey, what's the most off-putting way we can put that?" So Data's like, "He has the body of a child, but we have found him to be much more." It's like, what? Like, even as okay, I know you're an android, but that's just there's just no, and
I
and there's
so
and just
I love how like out of everything you're just like I gotta point at something they said about
well, I
Wesley.
need to I need to when I tell you the script is bad, I need to give you some pretty damning examples. Is the
All
is the
right,
thing,
so yeah, so my problem with this well, first of all, just talking about the good, not the only good, but just like you mentioned with Spiner, I enjoy, despite the fact that I do think that there were some issues with lore as well, and not just him as a character, but like the way he was written and whatnot. But I do think that Spiner is a great actor, and obviously he's been a great actor before this. But if you only watch Star Trek, or if you just really haven't seen him in anything else, and you see him as Data, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like he's being subdued, so be it. But then seeing him switch off between the two, obviously they had different takes and whatnot, but still having him be both characters was definitely a lot of fun. I didn't expect them to do something like that so early in the show. Usually they give that to a character in later seasons, or an actor in later seasons, because they want to, kind of breathe, and they feel like they're a bit too closed up as this character.
so you're
So
saying they went to the evil twin well too quickly.
or something like it. Just
Although
something
Kirk
where
Kirk got his evil twin episode in season one of his show, so we really can't throw stones. But
that's fair. So then, yeah. So then, this another TOS reference. No, but in seriousness though, I just usually you give this to an actor, in my opinion, the way I see it is who's done a season or two, and they're like, I want to do something different, and they're like, and it's never different because everyone does it, but it's still just a way to kind of breathe a little bit in a different role while still being yourself in that
Exactly.
series. So it's interesting they just kind of threw it at him in the first season, and it's also super funny that they didn't make him. They had to make him look exactly the same anyway. So it's kind of like, great, I'm still in the chair for the makeup. It's not like that
Yeah,
changed or anything.
and you're kind of getting in that regard. You're kind of getting two characters for the price of one. And I didn't even think of that. Is that yeah, he has to do like the however many hours data makeup, but you're getting two characters worth out of that.
Right.
So
So it's
that's
probably a
again
good thing for the
pretty
budget.
amazing. And I see what you're saying now, where it's like usually the breath of fresh air that he would get from playing against type would come later
Yeah.
after he's been in the role for a little while, but it's early on in the role. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying there. And it's
But
interesting because I think the original idea was going to be a character that instead of Lore, it was supposed to be a love interest for Data. That was another android that like went around solving problems.
so two
Um,
things. So two things. I'll get to that in a second, but I want to mention, and one of the bad things, not in contrast, but in tandem, everyone else also played completely different characters too.
yeah,
Uh,
everybody was kind of their own evil twin in this episode.
yes. And before we get to that, though, you mentioned the love interest. I thought that's where it's going to go, and thank fucking God. That would have made this so bad.
Yeah, no, and the love interest bit was before it was decided that it would be a twin of Data. It was like a female android.
Ugh. And the reason why
So it
that's
wasn't Data
bad.
falling in love. But hey, if you want an evil version of a regular character falling in love with the good version, check out Deep Space Nine.
So thank God it wasn't that. But I do find it odd that everyone was like, "Oh, it seems like we don't know a lot about Data," and I'm like, maybe you should ask Yar. She might know some things.
She's what was it? She's good at data entry. Um,
That that is a really good joke.
I can't take credit for that. There is a certain
Okay.
online community which is a wellspring of these things. But yeah, it's and as I said, it's kind of a big episode. And if you'll pardon the expression, it's a big episode lore wise, no pun intended,
I
because
mean, that's why they gave
we
him the
actually
name.
see this is really exactly this is the first time we really get any indication of Data's origins. It introduces Doctor Sung, um, and their creator, and of course it introduces lore. But yeah, lot of background information about Data. Probably the crew is getting their first look at kind of what makes him mechanically tick. Because I said they take him apart. Well, I don't think they take him apart completely, but they like kind of take a few things off him as a reference for putting lore together.
Yeah.
Um,
And so
but
but
yeah, so it's
the yeah, and I want to say, again, while I like Lore, especially how he's, just obviously the evil twin, the counter to everything that is Data. Um it is still one of those weird situations where obviously they didn't want to make everything he was doing too subtle, but I do think the contractions were subtle, but the twitches obviously were not. So it was a very strange situation where you were saying, and I agree, that everyone was different. And I think the reason why it was so odd is because, and so frustrating, is because in every episode that you would want Picard to say, "Shut up, Wesley," this is not the one. And I think you may have said that earlier in an earlier episode of What the Trek, but we would. I think it might have been one of the first few episodes where you mentioned to me either on or off podcast, man, like when we finally get to shut up Wesley, it doesn't feel satisfying.
Yeah, because in this case, he wasn't being annoying. He was being right. He was right, and no one was listening to him.
And
Which is also, I said,
in a way, I just want to clarify. In a way that I'm not saying that Picard season one it has not been kind of rude to Wesley at certain points. That even I've been like, dude, like this isn't the time. There's other times.
lay off.
But at the same time, though, it's like to just jump in with "Shut up, Wesley." Jesus Christ! It's not like there's. I don't know why that went randomly. That was like Australian. I don't like it. But no, but I just don't know why. It's just he's sitting there and he's just like, "What do we have to worry about? We only have another person who looks just like Data on the ship. Come on, Wesley. Jesus." It's like,
Yeah, and plus it was and that's what I mean by out of character. And also, because I said one of the strengths of Picard as a captain, as will come, as especially as we get into as the show goes on and we go into the season, get to know him better, is that he listens to all of his officers, no matter what weird thing they're reporting or any odd theories they have. he listens to them unless they're Worf, and then he shoots down all of his suggestions. Um,
And my thing is
but
too is even if he's not listening to Wesley, there's a way to not listen and not just immediately just be like, Jesus Christ, children, am I right? Like,
never
why?
mind the fact that the dude's trained as a diplomat, like his background is as a diplomat, and he snaps at one of his people on his ship to shut up. Like, I mean, I know Wesley's not in Starfleet. It just seems very like a lack of decorum from Picard. As funny a moment as it was, but also it's weird because they trusted Wesley enough to go check on Data, or to check on Lore, but like don't listen to him. They send him to unless the idea is that they're sending him to as like busy work just to keep him quiet. But why would you give him something that important just to keep him occupied?
Well, no, 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 because, well, the way it set up was, Lore as Data is like, I'm gonna go fucking murder Lore. I'm gonna go murder him. He didn't say that, but he was basically, it was kind of like he's gonna go murder him. And then you have Wesley being like, I would like to inspect the murder. And it's like, Jesus Christ. And then Riker's like, don't worry, I'll take the beating. I would never beat you. No, 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 I'm beating Wesley. Oh, good, go beat the child. And so he was there to supervise Wesley, basically. Like, Riker was there to be like, this fucking kid. And then obviously once Lore's like, you both must leave, Wesley's like, at this point, I'm a kid, whatever, I guess I'll leave. And Riker's just like, I'm gonna beat the fucking shit. Like, for some reason, Riker too seemed randomly angry. And it was
Yeah,
just so, and I'm not saying he can't get upset over things, but like another diplomat, arguably, who like can at some points, yes, he can be a little like, shoot from the hip, but at the same time, I feel like he was randomly rude, like, don't worry, Captain, I'll deal with this fucking kid. And it's like, wait, this is the one time it seemed like all he said was, I don't really think that's the real Data. And anyone, I mean, hell, Yar, who literally before was like, how can we trust Data? It's like, well, how could we trust, speaking of you being head of security, how can we trust that this is the actual Data? Well, you
yeah,
see,
exactly.
Yar
They
steps
were
in.
very, and then they're doing the whole thing. And they did this with Khan on TOS. Is that this character who they don't release it, even if they even allowing that they don't know that he's evil yet, they just give them like automatic access to the entire ship library and things like that. And probably it's not like but like schematics and things like that, like important things, not just like, oh, here's the library files, read a book or something like that. Like
Yeah,
it seems like they give them instant access to like potentially sensitive information.
I want to get to that in a second, but I want to talk about Yar just briefly again because, like, you look at Yar, head of security. In both episodes, she was a little off, but in certain cases, but head of security, and then you have a situation like this, and she's like, "Well, excuse me, everyone. Data wears Starfleet attire, and Lore does not. Thank you. This is my brief. Like, what is your porpoise? If why are you? She was so worried about Data. That, by the way, no talk of them ever boning. That just never comes up again.
Well, she did say it never happened, so I don't think she wanted to bring it up ever again.
Don't get me wrong, yes, but I feel like that's a random conflict of interest to be like, I think he might be a spy. Yeah,
Well, I
spied
think it
into
was.
them jeans. Oh,
I Damn. No, but actually, the reality is, I don't think it was that she thought he was a spy, or Yar thought Data could be a spy. I think it was that she was worried about his objectivity. Now that basically this other being, the first of his kind that he's ever met besides himself, who basically is like his
and
calls himself his
to
brother.
be fair,
He's
if that is the interpretation, if that is the take, then you're not wrong there. I took it as, well, what if he ends up turning on us? That's what I looked at it as. But
Yeah,
maybe you are
and
correct.
that where do his loyalties lie now that
Right.
he's basically found a surviving family member. Which and the thing that's interesting now that you bring it up is that it may have been a weird, and again, it's not that it's weird for Yar to mistrust Data, but at the same time, what I like about it is that she's assigning human frailty to him. She's saying like, hey, Data might actually have like an emotional entanglement or have his objectivity compromised by meeting his quote unquote brother. So she was assigning human qualities to him,
Data
even though it
Data
was
walks in.
even though it was kind of mistrust or at least like suspicion or hesitance on her part. But in her own way, she was kind of like acknowledging his humanity.
The second Data walks in, he's like, "Thank you. Why,
It's like,
thank you, Lieutenant."
honestly, him being like, "Hey, you're Data. We're worried that you're going to be, as unreliable as a human would be in this situation." You'd be like, "Thanks, goals."
I love how he's trying to sneeze and no one brings up the fact that, I mean, I guess maybe that was part of the joke, I'm sure, that no, 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 Data, nobody can practice how to sneeze. That's the point. It is a it is a response that is not like, you can't, like, anytime I've ever seen a movie or a TV show where someone's trying to
Yeah, you can't
sneeze.
really make yourself sneeze unless you
Well, no,
use
you
snuff or something to
well, no, no,
make
no, you
yourself
can make yourself sneeze. I'm just trying to say that, like, to fake it, where, oh no, I didn't actually sneeze. I did that for,
achoo. Yeah.
achoo. It never looks right. So that's just so funny. He's trying. He's like, achoo,
Well, he
and I
probably
was,
figured it's a thing humans. I think he thought it was like a human mannerism, like a weird
yes.
little tick that humans have.
And again, that's just,
But yeah,
more credit to Spiner for just being so over the top with Data at some of his more sillier moments. But what I didn't like, and this isn't a Spiner thing, it's just a Data thing. So you talked about, and thank you for bringing it up, about, they gave him basically the keys to the castle. Here's my problem. It's not them that did it. It's your smartest character, Data. And I know you mentioned maybe Yar was inferring that, oh, what if he trusts, lore too much, or does something stupid. But, and so if that's the case, then fair. But it just felt like one of those things where, even though, like, lore, in my opinion, maybe, I'm, because I am human, I read it differently, but lore in the
you are.
beginning, when he's saying everything to Data, I feel like Data, even not having any emotional attachment or anything, or yes, he thinks this is like a brother to him, but he still looks at that and he goes, that sounds very suspicious. I mean, he even said, I have to tell this to Starfleet afterwards. And he's like, oh no, I totally get it, bruh. You do what you gotta fucking do. I'm gonna crush
Yeah,
it.
no, got to get got to report into the old boss. You know what I'm saying? I got you. But
No,
and
no,
then of
no
course,
pain, no
and then
gain. Am I right? Am I right? Am I
am I right, bro?
right?
Then it's funny because, like I said, I will again. This is a this. I think I've been saying more positive about the episode than anything, but I like the fact that the evil twin's name is Lore, because think about it. There's Data and there's Lore. Data is cold, hard scientific fact. It's evidence, and Lore is like myth, story. With a very emotional component to it. So that's kind of I found that to be kind of an interesting comparison. Also, the fact is, Lore can basically experience emotions. Essentially having what Data has sought his entire existence, and Lore, the one who has emotions, is the evil one.
Because of the fact that it's emotion without. See, he says, the doctor made me more human, duh, but that's the issue. He didn't. So, in a way, the doctor did quote unquote fail, arguably, because when you try to fly too close to that sun, you get burned.
Yeah, and like Data at the end of the day, between Data and Lore, Data is the more human of them. Even though Lore can emote and use contractions, Data is just a better human being. Like, and
Right.
actually, and that also is the whole point of characters, that Data is a better human being than most people.
Yes, exactly. And so it was very interesting. But again, just the fact that Data is like, I should trust you with everything. And Laura's like, wow, I told you that I was evil, and you said, hey, you should have more power.
It's like, yeah. So
Dope.
anyway, how would you? So hey, Data, like, how about betraying the crew? And like the crystal snowflake will just give us a bunch of cool shit. Like, what would you say to that? Like, half joking, like
Data's
shot in the
like,
dark, and then he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna leave you alone and give you access to the ship's library."
no, no, it wasn't even like that. It was, to me, it came off as Lore being like, hey, listen, I'm going to kill you and all of your friends. And Data's like, I would never allow that to happen. And Laura's like, okay. And Data's like, so anyway, here's all the shit. And Laura's like, thanks,
It's like,
bye.
let's not.
like, I'm sorry. I don't think it was inflection in human to just to analysis, to analyze everything that Lore said in that first half and go, well, this sounds a little treasonous. So just to let you know, I'm gonna do something about this. Like, I thought they were gonna have a confrontation right there.
Yeah,
And
and really, and the fact that he didn't kind of more, and he probably, the thing is, like I said, he probably didn't want to drop the dime on Lore before he knew that there was really a threat. I feel like this still qualifies it, like, as reason enough to say something, and I think he does. But yeah, it's suspicious. There definitely wasn't enough, I think, urgency as soon as he started like talking about like feeding the crew to somebody. You know that
Just talking about how he's just like, I don't know, just the way he's trying to sow division. It wasn't done in a, because of the way he feels emotions as a counter to Data. It's so in your face that I'm like, oh, so this is gonna, even though it says 40 minutes, this might, we might get this one down in about 20, and then just have Picard reading poetry for the latter half.
yeah.
And
Okay, let's throw Lord in the brig. Let's go. Let's throw Lord in the brig and just play Parisi squares or something like that for the rest of the game, or for the rest of the episode, or play heads up, 7 up, or something.
no, it's just Lore slowly and more in your face going, oh my god.
And I think we'd spoken about it earlier, but the absolute kicker for this episode. Now, this is a whole episode where with an imposter, and one of the tells that the imposter has is that he uses contractions. And then at the very end of the episode, after Laura is beamed into space and the day is saved, Picard asks Data if he's okay, and Data, like the real Data, not Lore, says, "quote I'm fine." And that was, I said, that was an oversight, that wasn't intentional. And I said that's just kind of like the sloppiness of the script, is that like it was a plot point that Data can't use contractions,
No, I
and
don't
then he
think that was a
does.
plot point. I think that was, I mean, I'm not sorry, not plot point. That was a plot point. No shit. I don't think that was a problem with the script. I think they were trying to go for something that was funny. Like, oh my god, get rid of that. Get rid of that goddamned fucking.
But the thing is, like is it like Data shouldn't be capable of contractions is the thing, and any time that he does use them, it's basically a slip by the scriptwriter.
Oh, that I didn't know. Well, no, I thought that
Yeah,
it was,
he's not. He,
but
like I
no,
said,
but
he
he's
can't, because the
becoming
thing
more
is, he would if he
human.
could. He would if he could. Yeah, I don't know what in his program makes him physically incapable of doing it, but they
Hmm.
said that he just 100% does not use
Oh, okay. Well,
contractions.
I mean, the thing is, the reason why I don't want to say it, because like it wasn't like a did, because you made a joke to me before we began the episode. You were like, "Oh, does that mean that we killed the real Data?" And they didn't have one of those moments of like, "Who's the real Data?" Because they're both. Thank goodness they didn't go there, because it's like, why would you put them in the
That would
same
be a
outfit?
notch at the end, or is it?
Well, no, because it'd be like,
And
why
then
would you put them in the same outfit? Like, thank God they were in different outfits, because at least not only is that an indicator, who is Data, who is Lore, until they obviously very clearly come to that conclusion. But I mean more like it would be so silly if it was like, why don't we both just wear the same outfit? That wouldn't be weird. And then it's like, who's the real one? And Wesley has to pick up the barrel that clearly has nothing in it. I don't know why they didn't mute the audio, by the way. Like, they had audio of them throwing barrels with nothing in it, and you heard nothing being in the
oh yeah,
barrels as they're
you heard
throwing
how
them.
hollow. Well, it was supposed to be like feats of superhuman strength as these androids are slugging it
Which
out
is
in the
good,
cargo bay.
which I
Just
like.
like it, although I gotta be honest, it almost feels like an homage because it reminded me of all the foam rocks they would throw around in TOS, like all the paper mache
Right.
rocks that were supposed to be impressed by the person's strength. And it's like, yeah, that rock weighs like not even a pound.
But they wouldn't have a sound effect to make the rock sound hollow, I
But in
think.
this case, no, it's like let's just throw empty, lightweight barrels around.
I mean, hey, maybe in canon it's like, oh my goodness, there's nothing in those barrels, but they weigh millions of pounds.
Look,
Then why do we have them on the ship, sir? Shut the fuck
there is
up,
a
Wesley.
there is a season 5 episode involving the barrels. That the fact that they're light and there's
What?
nothing in them, it makes it very hilarious.
I I love that I love that we're doing this show together, John, because I get to hear the phrase there's a season 5 episode about these barrels. And
It's
I
well,
don't know
the
if you're
barrels.
kidding.
I mean, the barrel. I would say the barrels are like a major character in this episode because of what goes on. But the fact that they're empty and there's nothing actually in them in real life just kind of makes it sort of hilarious. But since it's going to be a while before we get there, we're going to need to cut back to a clip from this what I said just now as a
Yeah,
sort of recap. Previously
with the
on
trek. So anyway, so I look, I not that I hate this episode. It's just that again, like I feel like the idea that each and every person was for some reason, it's like the big goodbye felt like a normal version of all of them, and then because the thing is, even with the next episode, right? Even with Angel One, as much as I don't like certain things in that episode, it still felt like they were themselves. If that makes any sense.
yeah. Well, the characters were written more or less consistently with what they've with who they are. Even though even that's still kind of
Up in the air.
tenuous at this point in the series, but still, their personalities had begun to get established enough that you kind of knew in broad strokes who they were. But yeah, everyone just felt kind of off.
This felt like a script that went directly from, and I know it wasn't, but went directly from the pilot to this. Like if you saw the pilot and maybe the one where Data and Yar slept together, and then you see this episode, you're like, oh yeah, this is the crew. But
And the thing
so
is
odd.
that they were, yeah, and it was kind of like The Last Outpost in that, like I said, just the dialogue was weird, and it was kind of things that the character you don't necessarily know that they would say, or they wouldn't say it quite like that, but also too, the it's a weird nitpick on my part. I mean, personal thought, but just the terminology they used just wasn't consistent with a lot of other. As I said, Starfleet is, this is a whole other video for a whole other day, but Starfleet is basically a military organization, so the terminology that you use should be consistent, and the meaning is the same. And then I remember there's one line of dialogue where Geordi says that there's a bogey coming in on a 12 o'clock tangent, which is like military Air Force speak,
Right.
but they don't really say that on Star Trek. Like that's not a term that they use to describe an object or something on their, like that's like a 20th century term.
Yeah, if you had a drink for every time they just said the phrase something, something, something,
or whatever,
something, or captain, captain, captain,
or
something,
some kind of
something,
some
captain,
kind of
something, captain. Bada.
Okay, I'm gonna cop to it. But one bit of rather bad writing that is actually a very hilarious moment to me, and it was one of the highlights of the episode. Was so they're face to face with the crystalline entity, and then Lore as Data is trying to get them to lower their shields. So he suggests beaming out a small object to
like
destroy,
a tree.
like a tree, to show the crystalline entity that they mean business.
And Picard is like, Data, I have to admit, normally you're the stupidest motherfucker on this entire ship, but finally, for once, you've started making some sense.
And then you're right, and the thing is that it's one of those, they call it the idiot. I don't really like the word idiot, to be completely honest, but TV Tropes calls it the idiot ball. That's where, in order for the plot to
I like
succeed,
doofus balls better. Hey, it's doofus balls.
The doofus ball. Unless, that's why I say, unless the crew is holding the doofus ball that week, the plot doesn't work. It's one of those plot that requires the senior staff to be oblivious and gullible.
Wait, that twink in the next episode, is he holding the doofus ball?
He is.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's the doofus crystal.
Oh, right. But it looked like a crystal ball, so I thought it was the doofus ball.
Do not confuse the two, whatever you do. But
don't cross the streams.
That is such a nonsensical suggestion, and like I know that was part of the point. But the thing is, I can see like Laura suggesting some kind of like action that's more violent than Data would have suggested, to kind of hint that, oh, it's not what it seems. But it's like, oh yeah, why don't we lower the, like I said, and it's an excuse to get him to lower the shield. So it's like, why don't we like lower the shields and blow up a tree? That'll show them. And the crystalline entity is like, oh god, okay, they blew up a tree. Shit, I didn't think this through. Okay, Laura, we gotta abort. Laura, we gotta call this off, man. You just see what they did to that tree? They fucking blew it up.
What if I take off my pants and just kind of whirl my dick around like a helicopter? Brilliant! Everyone should be taking notes. Everyone. Like, he could have said anything. It didn't. There was nothing about it that made sense, that it couldn't have just been anything.
But again, as another part of my very running hot and cold compliment sandwich with this episode, because I know we're going to a really terrible moment, really cool moment, really terrible moment, but I think it's this episode where they're kind of having one of the first like frank discussions about Data's machine nature, and it looked like, I think it was one of the briefings where Riker and Geordi were kind of like dancing around the issue.
But that's what I'm saying. So Picard's like, look, let's just get to the point.
We're machines here too. We're humans are machines. We're just
electrochemical. Which I loved, but he was like, let's get to the point here, and that's why I said earlier, I'm like, just get Yar in the room. I feel like she, like, she's the only person that has ever made physical contact with Data in that way, and no one is even. I know that it never happened, but like Yar can't even like come in for a short stint. Like, interesting fun fact about Data. He has a mole on his ass, and they're like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, I mean, she knows him. She knows about a very certain part of his anatomy. She doesn't know much about his construction or
Well, but neither does Data. But I'm saying like no, but it felt like they knew nothing. Like they didn't even. It felt like no one ever even dressed him. They just found him completely dressed in Starfleet uniform.
Well, didn't they
Uh,
find? I mean, we got to see we found naked android parts. We got to see Lore's ass,
thank
and
goodness.
presumably, and Lore and Data are said to be identical except for a bit of programming. So by extension, we've also seen Data's ass as of this episode. But
Well,
um,
well, you know what, John, you've made this episode. Never mind. This is the best episode thus far.
it's that saved it. That whole
So one thing I want to say about Lore as well. So Lore's programming, because the thing is, so he's human, right? But he said the phrase I was made to serve." Was he bullshitting, or is that actually a thing, and that's why he was so intent on serving and getting that dopamine, that android dopamine, that he then was like, "I can serve a higher being like these crystals. Fuck these shitty meat bags. I'm gonna go
I
with the
mean,
crystals."
Lore. So basically, what you're driving at is Laura Bottom, and to
Yes,
that
thank you. Yes.
is Laura Brady Bottom. You know what? And that's one for the philosophers. But I think the line about being made to serve man was a sort of bullshit. Um, trying to ingratiate yourself, wink, wink, kind of thing. It's kind of like I love to serve humans to my crystalline friend.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's hilarious. To serve man. Hold on, it's a crystal
it's a
cookbook.
cookbook. Plus
Uh,
two. What I want to know here is okay. So Lore is in cahoots with this crystal entity life form,
of course. Of course.
which can communicate, just not in a way that we are totally familiar with. And then,
Understandable.
but Lore kept making vague allusions to how the creature will reward him, and I'm wondering how.
No, that's why
It's a
that's why
snowflake.
I was confused, and I thought it was under the impression of he gets that dopamine hit. Like, I mean, obviously in better, more scientific terms, but in science fictiony terms. But the idea is he's meant to serve, and he was serving the humans. Then they turned on him, and he's human, so he's like, he has more human traits. So he's like, "You turned on me, you motherfucker." And then the crystal is like, you can serve us," and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, this is dope." And then and that makes him happy, and then he also kills all those humans by leading the crystal to them. I say human,
Yeah.
but
So,
well, actually,
and
no.
the thing is, though,
Arguably,
is
they
that
were human, right? Arguably, they
it's
were
a
Earth
whole.
human, or are they just
Yeah, they were
human?
humans.
Human,
It was a human. It was a human colony.
right?
But the thing is, though, is that like, and we find out, not to be a huge spoiler, but this is not the last we see of the crystalline entity, and it's actually a major plot point in its next appearance, just a few seasons down the road. That part of the point of it is that it really is just a creature that's feeding, whereas this, it's just like an aardvark, like it just goes in and just sucks up everything that it
Of
can.
course.
Uh,
When I
but in
thought of
this
it,
episode, this episode seems to indicate that it has a bit more malice, like there's a bit more of a sort of.
in this episode, I felt like it had a greater purpose. But now that you put it like that, of course it's an aardvark. I mean, what else would it be?
So basically, Laura's offering the creature food because all it's trying to do is to feed, and then it gives in return it gives Laura question mark. It gives, I
Feed
guess,
me, Lore. Feed
energy,
me.
or and I figured my non joke answer is that it's probably some kind of like energy boost, or he helps him jack on or something like that. But I'm wondering, like, what could this floating
Oh,
snowflake.
I love how the phrase that got by the censors is, "Mom, how do you turn him on?" And Beverly's
I
like,
heard, Mom.
"Holy shit,
I heard
son."
I heard how to turn them on. Although I think Gates McFadden actually did make a joke about that at her first convention as Beverly Crusher. She was like, "I know how to turn Data on."
That makes a lot of sense. By the way, before we move on to the next episode, I want to talk about some of the special effects. So I talked about this with you earlier on in What the Trek. When it comes, and by the way, I love how the second we rebrand it, everything is just in everything. It's always been What the Trek. What are you talking about? The Mandela effect, the Trekdela effect. So
We altered the timeline.
we did. So anyway, I wanted to mention, like I had mentioned a while back, you were under the impression, John, that these episodes were untouched when it came to CGI, and I told you, oh well, it's new, but it's done in a way that's trying to be as what's the word, Fidelis. I forgot what it's trying to.
Well, I guess faithful would just be
Faithful, yeah. You're trying to
fun there.
faithfully do, because it's not like trying to. It's not going Star Wars with it, where all of a sudden like there's like 8 lores for some reason. Like, but it's trying to take the effects and update them in a way that makes it look like it is what you saw on a CRT at the time. Not everyone is exact, but I
But that
know
looks
that.
good on modern TVs though.
Yes, well, because they had to release these on Blu-ray, and so this is. I remember this being very expensive to release on Blu-ray, and they did not get their return back. I think just they took a long time to release them on Blu-ray because of all the work into it. So you should get them on Blu-ray, John. If they're still in print. But point is that the ones on Netflix and I assume CBS All Access. I'm sure you watched it through there. I watch it through Netflix personally. They have those released. They have those. I was gonna say ports. They have those updates, but it's very
Yeah, based on
interesting.
they're probably based on the Blu-ray version.
Yes, but what's very interesting is that apparently when the crystal, because obviously I'm referring to the crystalline entity when I refer to CG here in this episode. What's interesting though is that when it was done in the 90s, this was actually the first uses of CG in the show itself. So that's pretty
But
cool
what
to me.
about wasn't it the but what about like the jellyfish in Encounter at Farpoint?
That might have been like even though I don't have it in front of me, that might have
I
been
thought it
some.
was an ILM. That
That
might have
might have
even been
been
an ILM thing.
what's ILM. I was thinking of
ILM
layers.
it's a special effect, like a big famous special effects company for movies. They do a
Hmm.
lot of Star Wars. They did some Star Trek. They're like one of the big, or at least they were at the time, one of the big names in special effects for movies.
Yeah.
Before CGI was a big thing.
And the thing is, when I say CG graphics, I'm CGI graphics is the exact term. That might mean like constructing it from nothing, perhaps. Maybe the jellyfish there was like it was touched up upon, but it was initially an image or something. But this is like full on. Like there's nothing like this. Like I assume
Yeah,
that's what they're referring
this
to.
was the first. I think this was the first effect of that scale
That's what I'm saying. This
in
was
the
made in
show.
computers because it was again, computer generated. So I'm assuming maybe that's the difference they're like using here. But either way, though, I thought that was interesting to mention because again, it's always interesting to remember that oh right, we're watching HD upscales, which I don't think they were. I have to say the one thing that has survived. I don't think they touched it up in any way, CG wise, but in later episodes because it didn't hold up in the first in the first few episodes, but in these later ones in this season, Data's makeup does not look like it's smeared in any odd way. In the first few, they were odd. Like I was like, ooh, you wouldn't be able to tell on a CRT back in the day, but now,
But you can tell now, yeah.
but
And
his
Data's makeup was a little bit of a mess in the earliest episodes. They found their stride later,
again,
and then just in
I don't
general
think you would have noticed it
in
on a
season
CRT.
two, like
Yeah.
starting with season two, like a lot of the makeup prosthetics and stuff like that got a lot better, including Worf's forehead.
Yes. I feel really bad for his forehead and for his sneezing, but we're not at the sneezing just yet. But I feel bad for that. So, anything you want to say about this episode before we move on to the next one? Again, I did not love it, although I do like your interpretation of it. I didn't love it, but it definitely like when we did the big goodbye last time and you were like, "Oh, the next one's going to be awful." I thought they were going to give him a girlfriend who was going to be like, "OMG, hi Data," and he was going to be like, "Whoa, I'm in a sticky situation." And then they were going to be
Yeah,
making fun of him.
if I outright said that it was horrible, I was probably being a little bit harsh. It's definitely not an awful episode. It's above even with the bad writing. I feel like Spiner's performance evens it out enough that it's still an above average season one episode. So yeah, it's one of the better ones, and because of its significance in the story to this point. Like I said, this is the first look at Data's origins, first mention of his creator. It introduces, so it's still a significant episode, and another one of those things where when people say, "Oh, skip season one," like I would still give this one a watch just for A, to see
Data.
Brent Spiner do his thing, and B, because important plot stuff does happen in this episode.
Yeah, no, I would recommend it. Yeah, like I'd say, hey, listen, there's gonna be some weird shit. Because again, like Wesley is just trying to do his normalist. Although, yeah, it's just so funny how they're jumping in between. Wesley's just a normal kid, and Data's like, he actually might be our god, and Laura's like, oh shit, interesting.
turns out that Wesley is the best person ever, and Lore's like, I'm evil, so I don't think so.
Well, it was just so funny how he was doing things like he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to flatter them up," and I was like, "I love how that's like an evil thing. Like you should no, no, no. The right thing is Data going around going, "Sir, you smell."
Well, it's
Thanks,
just like,
Data.
that almost felt like the next thing they say is like, oh yeah, I'm so evil because I'm eager to prove, I'm nice to these humans like an asshole, and
But is it just me? Maybe it's because we're too nice, John, and not like oh TM nice guys. Like fuck that shit. But like we try to be good
we're
people.
kind gentlemen.
We try to be good people, right? Is it because of that? Because when he said to Wesley, he was like, "Oh, very clever." I thought he was being legit, and then he was like, "No, I was being a piece of shit," and I was like, "Oh, like
Wait,
I
because was it then? Didn't they do the whole thing where he says, "Oh, you're very clever," and then they went in the hallway. He's like, "I hate Wesley."
no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it went from him saying like, "Oh, very clever, Wesley," and then later on, like Data for some reason picked up, and he's like, which I love how Data can't pick up on emotions, but apparently for some reason he could in this point. And he was like, I think it was very rude the way you were being to Wesley, and Laura was like, "Yeah, well, fuck Wesley," and Data's like, "Excuse me." Oh no, because Laura was like, "He's just a child," and I don't know, it was just very odd, especially because again, like it seems like like you said earlier, they're playing the evil versions because everyone else agrees. Like this fucking little shit. Even Beverly was like, "Shut up, Wesley," and like I think they did it in a way where it's like, "No, no, no, don't worry. We heard what you're saying. Don't say anymore. It like out loud. We get it."
It's like, yeah, be quiet. Just be quiet right now.
Which I get that, but I love
Don't take
how
us
she
any
said
deeper.
it. And then later on, Wesley, like I guess some people wouldn't like it, but for me personally, I loved how he was just like, "Oh, well, you gonna tell me to shut up, mom, son?"
And then she's like, "That's not fair." Dirty pool, Wesley.
Also, by the way, I love how Beverly. Two things about Beverly before we move on. One, Beverly got it first, and then we decided, fuck Beverly, let's focus on Wesley so we can shit on him for it. No, because Beverly was the
Like,
first one to
what do you mean? Like
notice.
she figured it out first, or
Yes, I mean at least because you have Data being like, or Data really Lore being like, wow, I feel like that's giving me what you humans would call an erection. And looking at the crystal, and then she's like, Data doesn't get erections, and Yar's like, yeah, he doesn't, really loudly. And
it's
so
like, wait, can confirm.
he does not. Everyone's like, wait, you can confirm? She's like, security breach. She runs away. But
Oh no, it's a red alert! Ah, oh no, the snowflake is gonna attack us.
but it was just so odd that she notices it, but then we focus on Wesley, and even she's like, "Oh, fucking Wesley!" And it's like you're the one who noted it. And then Beverly is the strongest character on that entire fleet, maybe other than Worf. She was lit on fire.
Yeah, and didn't even stop running.
No, just she's a trooper, man. Just get lit. Like Picard must have seen that somewhere in some replay, and he was like, "I should take you as my wife."
And
What?
then, of course, there's the rude joke is left as an exercise to the student. But when Laura's like, "I'm going to turn your little man into a torch," it's like, is that something that I don't
I
know? Is that the pieces of the joke are there? There's something Beverly says to Picard, or I don't know.
Yeah, all I know is I wasn't like I was it wasn't laughing, but I was just like, just his utter like I really think Spiner had fun with that. Just his utter like,
Yeah,
Data's
it's
like
contempt for because we're used to everyone kissing up to Wesley, and you finally have a character that just. And actually, now that you mention it, Laura kind of had it in for Wesley in particular.
it's just I wonder if that was the writers
He wasn't
screaming
that
out.
violently. He was most violent. I mean, he was trying to feed them all to a snowflake, but he seemed especially like malicious and vindictive toward Wesley, which is, I'm sorry, kind of funny.
I want to see like a deleted scene of literally him, he's been kind of rude to everyone sort of, but like obviously he, is really bad to Data, and he's, gonna murder Wesley, and he lit Beverly on fire, but the second he closes the door on Worf and Worf looks at him with his hands up, he looks at Worf and goes, "E2, Worf? Anyone but you, Worf." Just the one person he's like, "I thought we were cool." The one
Well,
guy.
that was also kind of cool too. Is that the like the fight with Lore
He
and
punched him so
Worf and
hard in the
Kerbal that.
chest. I thought it was
Yeah, and
like
then
a
just punch, just like one shots Worf.
I thought
And
it was
unfortunately, that's kind of the beginning of what would become known as the Worf effect, is
yeah.
where you show how powerful a new threat is, by having it kick Worf's ass really easily. And it's supposed to show that, oh, look how easily he can take down the toughest guy in the room. But in practice, what it ends up making it look like is that Worf is a wimp, and every new alien that comes along kicks his ass.
See, I agree with that. However, I have to say, while I agree with that, it hitting him getting hit right in the chest that hard and hearing the punch, the sound effect, I thought it was like Fist of the North Star. Like I was like, just Worf is just like just holding his chest.
He was gonna Riccio and punch right through him.
Yeah, and then no. Well, yes, that's a fun one. But you know the Fist of the North Star one, right? The You're Already
Yeah.
Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, you don't know, but you're already you're
yeah.
dead and you don't know it yet.
As Lore is walking away from Worf, he's just like, "You're already dead." He used a contraction, by the way, so you know it's Lore.
You came 1,000 years too early.
You're already dead, and Worf is like, "What?" Just blood.
Well,
in
today
the
was a
entire
good day
elevator.
to die.
All right, so let's move on to the Angel one, or just Angel one. I called it
Angel
the
one, yeah.
Angel fucks, and you were confused. You were like,
Well,
"What?"
I also you had me rolling for about half an hour because the Angel called Angel One just after the planet that takes place on, but you were calling it the Angel Ones.
But that was, but
And
wait, hold up. But before that, I called it the Angel fuck, and you were even confused about that. You were like,
I
"What?"
was
You
a
were like,
little bit, I forgot what episode we were doing, and I kind of was confused, but
"Well, because you've seen these
honestly, it
episodes,
sounded promising, so I just kind of went with it.
you've seen these episodes so many times that you're sitting around, you're like, I know them, but I don't know what order they're in."
Well, in this case, usually with TNG, I actually do remember the order. I just get certain ones like mixed up. I knew that it was coming up, but I wasn't sure if it was the next one or not. But yeah, this is another kind of clunker from season one.
Also coming up, Riker. Um, and I have to say, and I mean that in more ways than one. So this episode was not good. See, you remember when I said last time, John, the last What the Trek we did, and I said, look, man, at this point, as long as the episode isn't like racist, sexist, or homophobic or something, I feel like at least it's just like, at least it's in the middle. Like at least it's not that. And then we get Angel One, trying to teach us a lesson. To be fair, it tried. I just think that it fell right on its ass.
Yeah, what this wanted to be was a critique or a deconstruction of sexism by reversing the roles, the traditional roles, and having the women be the powerful one, the large and powerful ones, and the men being the small and submissive ones. I think that was the idea, but in practice, it was really just ha ha ha. Can you imagine a topsy turvy world where women were in charge? Women ruling a planet? Can you imagine? Like that's kind of the vibe that I got from it.
And I think
and
a problem that I had with it, right, is, and not the only problem, but one of them, I was telling you about this before we began the episode, John. When this episode took place, I'm not going to say that things were, oh, they were the best for women in real life. And, they're great now. No, no, no. But I do think that with the half black, half white episode from Star Trek, that was around the time we were, people were trying to be able to vote in this country. And also, obviously, racism is still prevalent in our society, but I'm not going to say it was better in the 60s. So I feel like that was a very big episode, and it was very impactful. Very much like having Uhura and Kirk kiss. Very impactful for the time. Now, maybe in some states they find it impactful, but I feel like I would hope that we've.
well, given the current, and
To be fair,
I'll leave it at that.
You're right.
Given the current political climate, like you would think that wouldn't be a big deal, but
that's fair. That is fair to be fair. But what I'm getting at more so is that you feel like not that things have gotten better, but that there is a certain time to try to do that to have the most impact. But I feel like in the workforce, and again, I'm not going to say that was great in the 80s, but in trying to combat things like sexual harassment and whatnot, I feel as if it was an odd time to come out with an episode like this. Like, I think that a better episode that could have been done was focusing on the LGBTQ plus community, which again, still there are people discriminating against them and trying to stop trans people from, just living their lives, having jobs, having housing in a multitude of states. And hell, even in ones where it's not on the books that you can discriminate, you'll have a trans person be fired, and then you wonder, well, why were they fired? And they dress in corporate attire. There's nothing that anyone would try to say that there's a quote unquote hair out of place. But guess what? You hear, John, you hear someone, in the feedback, well, you don't fit in with our company's culture. And it's like,
Yeah, you find
ah.
excuses. You find unofficial,
Yeah.
off the books reasons to get rid of somebody
But I
when
think that
when
the
everybody knows
80s,
what it really is about.
yes, but I think that
But
the 80s with the AIDS epidemic, well, 80s, 90s with the AIDS epidemic, I think that would have been a better time to have, like, that would have been the best time to have an episode trying to be like, look, listen, they're just like us. Maybe you don't have one about AIDS specifically, but just having a they're just like us episode, I feel like that's a good time to have it. But, and also if this episode occurred in the 60s with TOS, I think they're just like us, don't, not just like us as in if they seized power then we would all be their slaves, not in that respect, but I think that's the problem with an episode like this. That's what it kind of puts out there. But what it was trying to say was, hey, see how that's bad for men, that's why we shouldn't do it to women. That's what they were trying to say. I
that
feel
was
like
the
that's a
idea. Yeah, that was the intent.
I
That
but
was
I
the
feel like
intent. And
I think that's a better 60s episode, where in the 80s it comes off like what you said, John, where it's like, wow, imagine if women ruled the world. That would be so lame, and then they would make you look like you're this effeminate. Oh, who wants to look like those
now,
men?
first of all, don't threaten me with a good time.
All right.
Secondly,
And also, by the way, I love how they just, there was this air of, why do you want to look like those guys? And I saw a guy in the back and I was like, mi hermano. Like, I was like Data. I saw a guy with long hair. I don't know if you noticed him. He was just in the background. He had long hair, kind of like I did, or like I do, but like it was wavier, like mine used to be. And when I
well,
was skinnier, my chest looked just like that. And I was like, mi hermano. I felt like Data with Lore.
look,
I'm like, this is,
look, like yeah, like looking at it, like Spider-Man looking at himself in that meme.
yes.
What? Honestly, if it's a planet full of pretty men, yeah, you're gonna find a guy that looks like Matt Marrero. Let's face it.
That is very true. And you look like a bearded Riker, which it's like Matt. He eventually becomes bearded, but not at
I'm
the
full
time.
on season. I'm like parallel reality beard right now. But
Right, but right,
um,
but normally you're season 2 beard.
yeah, my normal state for a while was like a season 2. I would say season 3, like when it was
Okay,
fully in. But now there's an episode where he's in a Borg infested parallel reality, and I think I've got that beard right now.
right,
Um, but
but
yeah, so you know what it is, to your earlier point. I know you had commented on like the timing of this episode. Now, unfortunately, as we know, sexism was just as much of an issue in the '80s as ever,
still
and
rampant.
continues to
Yes,
be to this very moment.
yes,
I know that you probably were speaking in terms of like as far as like what was really the hot button. I
yes,
don't remember
yes,
to
yes,
what
yes.
degree.
That's what I'm
I
trying to
don't
get at
remember
here.
to what degree. Like I said, I was very young when this episode came out. I don't know what was going on that front in 1988, 87, 88, around there. But as far as what you had mentioned about like the gay, the LGBT issues and things like that, like and as we're discovering now, lots of different issues can be relevant and can be necessary to talk about at the same time.
Of course, but I just
There
think that
was and
if they're gonna try to make an episode like this where the roles are reversed, they tried it with TOS, and clearly this was trying to mirror that. I just think it was the wrong topic to try to mirror, because I feel like at the time you have men and women watching this, and I feel like what you get is sexist men who watched this did not learn something. They were like, wow, that does sound like that would be a hard time. Unless, of course, you're a manly man like Riker with that hot broad. Like, that's what that guy would think. And then
and
the
really what it boiled. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
and then the women watching are either like, that doesn't sound so bad, that society, or they're like, oh wow, really, a women-led society that's clearly been written by men, because all the women are undercutting each other. And out of nowhere,
Yeah,
Yar and Troy are,
it's still and it still smacks of having a man write it because the
yes,
whole thing is basically like snoo snoo. Like I feel like the focus is like, oh, look at big powerful women, and this in this fantasy world where a woman can rule anything. Like and so it kind of falls on its face, and it kind of has a symptom of the problem that for all its wonderful qualities, TNG struggles with this is that it doesn't really do super great with issue shows. It insists on tackling a lot of hot button issues of the day, but doesn't handle it in a very well thought out way, and doesn't really tell you anything new, or doesn't really explore the subject. It kind of just brings it up but refuses to sort of. The thing is that they want to do hot button issues, but they don't want to alienate any part of their audience, so they're kind of like
Well,
sitting on the fence a little bit.
well, the
Not that that's
way
what's going on here. That kind of shows up later as well. But I feel like as far as wanting to handle these complicated issues, wanting to handle these social conscious issues, and not really knowing how. And I said like, and then you brought. It's funny you brought up I think it was Let That Be Your Last Battlefield on TOS with the guys with the half black, half white faces. That worked because it was such a simple on the nose metaphor to kind of show how childish racism is.
yes,
Like
but
it's
it
like
also it's also weird too because like while they're trying to do that, it also comes off as like, man, it's like both sides are just fighting. When it's like, well, this is a little systematic, but like you said, in a very on the nose, simple way, they described racism being silly. Here, I
yeah,
feel like it wasn't so on the nose to describe that sexism is silly because of the way they all interacted with each other. And then you also have these men who, I mean, arguably, if you want to read more into it, you have if it was the reverse, you'd have men saying that these women are hysterical, and then you meet them and they're like, hi. And you're like, you don't seem hysterical.
and it's what it is, and I think it was to show, like I said, the shoe being on the other foot, kind of see how the other half live. Where how would you like it if women treated men the way men treated women? And again, as a concept, I'm on board with that. That can be kind of an eye opener, but it was done in a way that felt insulting. It still felt condescending to women, and it had that sort of like what women want with Mel Gibson type thing, where it's like, haha, men be like, women be like, and also really, really doubling down on the whole gender binary thing, where it's like, okay, men, typically it's just the converse of the existing binary. Oh, typically men big, women small, men
But
strong, women
now,
weak. But
what
now
if?
we've taken that exact binary and just flipped it, so it's women big and strong, and men small and weak. Which, like I said, we didn't know, at least in the general public consciousness, nearly as much about gender and sexuality in '88 as we do
Of
now.
course, but
Um,
it is hilarious that then that is also followed up with, but thank goodness, the key to unlocking the problems with sexism is Riker's penis.
yeah,
Because,
and that's yeah.
and don't get me wrong, John, I feel like that could be the answer to a lot of problems. A lot of life's greatest mysteries could probably just be solved with Riker penis. But in this situation, it just made things more problematic and more of a
Fact
problem.
fiction. Yeah, it doesn't help, and this is what I'm talking about the sort of issue show falling on its face, is because they do it's you can see in their way what they were trying to do, but then they have it where all the problems is the whole problem that was going on this week is solved because the leader of the female leader of the colony just needed a little something something. She just needed a big man to show her a good time and put her in her place, and that was the solution to the problem of the week.
And
So,
and it
and that's
stinks
what I mean by
because
insulting. It still kind of shoots itself in the foot.
yes, and it stinks because her dialogue, I would argue, is not about her being shown up. It's about them being equals, in a sense, and that's what they were probably trying to go for. See, he big man, she big woman, equals. But it just doesn't come off that way
Yeah, it
with
was
the
still a big. They needed a big, strong man assault to save the day, kind of thing. So,
just the
yeah,
fact
it
that he
wasn't.
explained sexism to her, and she's like,
Yeah,
"Wow,
yeah.
I
We had
have been the foolish one."
Riker mansplains sexism to the matriarchal leader
Oh man,
of a planet. So yeah, check that one off your bingo card.
fucking brilliant.
Also,
Such a good
real quick,
decision.
go ahead, go. I'm sorry.
No, I said such a good decision.
Exactly. Also, no, as we're shifting back into John Spout's lore, if you'll pardon the expression, this isn't the right episode for that, but
No,
um, this is the first mention, I think, of the Romulans on TNG, even though nothing
yeah,
comes of
buddy.
it.
But
And
still, that was
I think the
nice.
Romulans just went, and it's funny because I think after all this buildup that they have to get to the neutral zone and time's running out, and then they get to and then like nothing happens. I think the Romulans just went home.
And that's what I love so much. It's just like, whatever, fuck these guys. They're being rude
Yeah,
to us.
the
They're
Romulans wouldn't make their grand re-entrance into the franchise until the end of season one. But yeah, this was the first tease of. Although I think in an earlier draft of the script, it wasn't the Romulans; it was the Ferengi that they were rushing to have a confrontation with, because I think they were still trying to make the Ferengi a legitimate threat. They hadn't given up quite yet. But I think at some point in the rewrite it became the Romulans, but then the confrontation never happened anyway.
So it seems as if there were three plots this episode. Usually there's an A and a B plot, but there was an A, B, and C plot. So the A plot is, hey, we're on this planet and there's women ruling it. That shit be crazy, right? Then the B plot was something that feels very odd to be talking about right now with our state of the world. It was a virus plot. It was a sickness plot. It was, oh, at least we know it's not airborne plot. Every time Beverly discovered something new, my anus clenched a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the B plot. And the C plot is the fact that so here's something interesting. So when LaForge is on the bridge and contacts Dr. Crusher in sickbay, there's a shot of an older gray-haired nurse behind LaForge, right? And she's apparently she's like assisting an ill crewman. Then a second later, the same nurse can be seen behind Crusher in sickbay. So
Yup.
it seems as if the C plot is that this nurse was dealing with her own lore in a
There's a
separate.
clone. Yeah, there's a clone. There's a D plot, which is the clone of the white haired. I actually forgot about that. That is a wonderful blooper that I totally missed.
It's just one of those things where obviously they shot those at different times, so clearly the same extra was in both shots. I hope that she enjoyed her meal voucher. She is now part of TNG history forever.
Or there are There are twins. There's twins on the ship.
All
or
I'm saying
clones.
is this is a C plot, and they were clearly having the same data and lore. They were arguing with each other. She knocked the other one out, and no one gives a fuck.
They were throwing empty like 2-pound barrels at each other
And nobody was giving a
in the
fuck.
cargo bay. It was intense, and we didn't get to see it because there was already too much happening.
There's already so much happening. So people are walking by, seeing this happen, and just going about their day.
Yeah, yeah, and we don't. You see these things. These are the secret battles that we know nothing about that go on in the background of our everyday lives.
I thought you were going to say these are the days of our lives. It would be like, Sean, why?
Different show, different discussion.
But by the way, Forgy, the fact that he actually ran the ship.
Yeah, great moment. And like I said, I know we've been doing kind of like a compliment sandwich with these episodes. I'm going to come out here and say it. One of the highlights of season one, honestly,
I
is
teared
that
up
one
a little
moment
bit.
where LaForge takes command, and you can tell the reverence on his face as he sits in the command chair. He's looking at the armrests and really just getting into the zone, getting his game face on, and really trying to do Picard proud as far as taking command, because everyone's dropping like flies. Also, wouldn't be the first, or rather, wouldn't be the only time in season one that he does take command, despite being at this point a junior officer.
Make it so.
So yeah, that was a really cool moment, and
Well, I liked it because
very well done by LeVar Burton.
I liked it for a few reasons. So obviously, it does something that you need to see situations where it doesn't just rely on number one or number two. At a certain point, it's like, okay, but just like with the president, the vice president, there's a number three. So who's the next in command, and who's the next in command, and who's the next in command? So at a certain point, if number two is disposed with sex, because that was the most important, diplomacy, and number one is disposed with dying, who takes over? And I love how they were like, well, let's let him do it. Why wouldn't he? And I think that was a beautiful thing.
He would be next, because it goes Picard. Picard was sick. It was Riker. Then Riker's down the planet. Then Data. Data was down on the planet. So then the next in line is LaForge. So he's a junior officer, but he's high, and he's like right on the upper kind of cusp where he could find himself, in charge if. Although the weird thing is, Crusher had her handful with the,
Yes.
and I think that's part of the reason why they had Crusher be busy taking care of people the whole episode, is because that she would probably be next. She would take command before Geordi did, unless she was tied up trying to handle this out of control pandemic.
That's fair to think about, especially because he's obviously Jordy's very young, like as a character too. He also looks very young, and so don't get me wrong, LeVar Burton has aged very gracefully, but like you see, you're like, wow, he's young.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
So
early reading Rainbow of our Bird.
very much so. So no, I really enjoyed it just because, and it felt like he wasn't bad at it either. And I loved Worf giving him a little nod and him just being like, thanks, thanks, man. He's like, no problem. I'm gonna die. Also, I loved how everyone else got sick really quick, but Worf is like, no, no, it'll take me a while, but when I get it, it's gonna suck.
Yeah, it's going to be I'm pretty sure they had to wipe the view screen down after that Klingon screen, the Klingon sneeze,
Oh,
because
by the way, I love so much Beverly. It transfers through smell. So when you smell it, which by the way, remember Picard, I just said it smells great. When you smell it, that's how you get. And she just didn't get it.
yeah, yeah,
She's like, wait a minute. We have to light everyone's arm on fire. No, no, no. Let's not do that. Actually, are
she
you
had
are
that
you
last
sure,
week.
Captain Geordi? I'm very sure. Do not light everyone's arm on fire.
Oh, one other thing too, and while we're picking nits, so that's we said something nice. Now we got to say something critical.
We must.
So much is made, like I said, back with with his tryst with Yar. He said that he's fully fully functional and versed in multiple pleasure techniques, and yet he didn't know what the word aphrodisiac meant.
Well, yes. Something else funny as well is that they acted as if while you're having sex, you just blow perfume on each other. And honestly, the way they described it and smiled, I'd be just as confused as Data was. I'm like, how do y'all use perfume?
He's probably like, well, I don't know, humans do weird stuff. I don't, I just kind of went with it.
No, I'm just saying that like the way they described it as an aphrodisiac, and Data's like, how does it enhance sex? And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't. It's a before, not a during, and not an after. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it makes you go, oh, but it doesn't make you, keep going. It doesn't make you a trooper because you spray
It's like, wait,
perfume.
I'm running out of steam. Let me hit me with a little bit more of that Eternity by Calvin Klein, or
I love that you chose Eternity as the one that helps you last longer. Thank
yeah,
you, John.
exactly. Stand to reason. If they even make that anymore, I might be dating myself here, but
Forever wrong, John. I disagree with that assessment.
often wrong, John.
Sorry, often wrong. Eternity wrong, John. I'm just changing your nickname. Um, I, I, again, we are having fun shitting on these. Again, it's just one of those things where, it could have been something great. It could have been a contender, John. But the way the way it's worded, some of the production crew thought that they thought poorly of Angel One, and
Yeah,
executive
it was
Maurice.
not a great thing.
I didn't hear about this until I'm reading about it right now. So executive producer Maurice Hurley described it as terrible, just terrible. One of the ones you just as soon erase. And producer Herbert Wright felt that the sexual places it was dragged to were absurd. And here's the thing I want to mention, right? What isn't absurd is Riker being a sex symbol. That's not absurd. But in this specific situation, it didn't need to go that route. You
Yeah,
know?
it was. Well, first of all, I'm gonna come out and say it. I will at some point in my Star Trek cosplay life cosplay Angel One Riker. I
You
mark my
better.
words. I will make that outfit. It's
Good.
amazing. But that much being said, I think it was that was still part of the role reversal where it's like, well, Riker is like the plaything now. Like he's the dolled up,
He
sexy.
definitely did not. I mean, even though they tried to make jokes early on, which was also great, by the way, let's show that sexism is being flipped on its head by calling Riker a little baby, or whatever they were trying to imply, by wearing all that. Like, look at you being a plaything, you little shit. And they're like, but thankfully, let's show the horrors of sexism. Um, and then
Exactly. It's
again,
like Riker comes out, and immediately Troy and Yor basically are like, "Hey, slut."
basically,
But
and
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 again,
and
listen,
Troy
and if
can
Riker
slay
wants
it.
to wear that to feel sexy, that's fine.
And Troy, I feel like Troy can say it, or Troy can like in her mind, just her looking at him and then just saying it telepathically, and he's just like, "Stop."
Well, this is her ex boyfriend. Basically, it's like so that's got to be worth a few points in somebody's book. That you get to see your ex boyfriend dressed up like some kind of Siegfried and Roy
Yeah.
concoction.
Also, I felt like it was so odd. Just again talking about how Yar and Troy were off. Not just there, because when you had Riker say it's because she's a beautiful woman, isn't it? The fact that two of them were like schoolgirls instead of being like, you want to kick his ass?
Yeah, yeah,
Because I thought
exactly.
they were trying to
So,
be like,
so
huh,
a lot of sexes, kind of sexism of a kind of or another in an episode that's supposed to be nominally about sexism, but like I said again, really ends up trying to be a case of like ha or like wow, hot that these tall tall women,
yeah. So it was
giant
just
woman.
yes, exactly, giant woman. So that was, and they weren't even that tall. Can I just say that like you would think that they would like put them in like a, obviously that would cost money, but they would like put them in a green screen something or other where you would think they'd really be large, or but they got women who maybe I don't know. To me, they just got small men. They didn't get tall women. They got short men. Is it just me,
Well,
John?
they got well they cast short men.
No,
That's
no, because
definitely for sure.
here's what I'm
And
trying to say, right? I'm 5'4" on a good day, right? So I'm a short dude, so I know this. If you get a woman who's 5'7", she's just taller than me. She's not 6 foot. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
they
I mean, I
didn't
see what you're
get.
saying is that by casting shorter men, it makes the women look taller. But I think they actually did go out of their way, and I remember reading that they had trouble finding
Oh, okay. So then
women.
fuck me then. My bad.
It was trying to find they specifically went out of their way to find women who fit the height profile, but that it was a bit of a it kind of limited their pool to draw from because there weren't a lot of women that were the height that they needed, which I think would probably be I don't know probably I would say probably 6 foot like Mistress Beata was it or yeah I think she could have been 6 foot. I'm not positive though, but yeah, so real like legitimately tall
So then my
women with
bad. Maybe just the way they framed it, it didn't seem to me that they were super tall.
yeah, or maybe they just like I said it can be hard to tell, especially like I said when they're being deliberately put alongside short men.
Yes.
That can change the perspective too. But
Also, apparently,
yeah,
this
so
episode was supposed to be a commentary on apartheid in South Africa. John, did that come across to you in any way?
not not really, not really. I
Uh,
mean, what was the idea? I know it was the idea of the men being slaves and things like that. But yeah, I did not get apartheid
so a
from
bunch of
this.
white men were supposed to represent black people. Damn it, Star Trek, you did it again.
Yeah,
Um,
again, this is and this, but the thing is, this is kind of a good cross section of why a lot of issue shows on TNG in particular kind of fall flat is because they kind of miss the point. It's you're gonna have an allegory on apartheid, yes, with a group of white men, hiding out in caves and things like that. So it's kind of sort of missing the point in almost kind of like Michael Scott kind of way.
that is the best way to describe this, yes. So anything you want to say about this episode? Any other way you want to shit on it? Because I feel like we could do that for a while. Any other way you want to? Because I feel like I can shit on it in one more way.
But well, please do go ahead.
Okay,
Shit away.
so I love that after all the missions they've done, every single motherfucking mission, all Riker has to say, he didn't say, "Hey Troy, hey Yar, I'ma bang this diplomatic mission out, peace." He was just like, "Hey, the mistress wants me to meet with her, and obviously it's customary for me to wear this." And Yar was like, "You're gonna wear that like one of them?" And I'm like, what do you think? Where do you? It was like a Scrubs. Where do you think we are?
Yeah,
What do you
exactly.
think we do
Yeah,
for a living?
like he said in the other episode when in Rome.
No, he literally said he's like, I literally have worn feathers. I've worn fur. Like what?
Yeah, I want to see those outfits.
Yeah,
Honestly,
right.
show me like Lieutenant Commander Riker wearing the feathers and things like that. That's one for the fan art, honestly.
Yeah. And oh, what I was trying to get at before, something that I think, they were trying to do. Maybe they weren't, but to me it came off as what they were trying to do. We didn't get to flesh out this point. It felt like very much like how Spock became, and this was organic. They weren't trying to do this in the original series, but how Spock became a sex symbol. It feels like they were trying to make Riker a sex symbol very much with an episode like this, but I think it just again because they were very sexual in an episode that wasn't meant to be sexual, it got very odd because like this them being sexual made more sense on the Pleasure Planet one, and yes, there were issues with that as well, but at least everyone wanted to have a good time. In this case, it was very much like, let's talk about a serious issue. Like, I don't know, it would be like a serious issue about drug addiction, and they're like, and we should totally drink.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Eh,
and also, I mean, keep in mind, and this is another, especially early TNG problem is let's have like a really highbrow, hot button, highfalutin issue, and then have like sexy stuff happening in the foreground. Like they did that with
yeah.
the death penalty episode with Wesley, where it's like they're trying to have Picard's
Right.
giving this long moralizing speech about the nature of justice, and there's people walking around with their butts hanging out. Like
I remember that
not
it
that
was
you can't.
John, please, for a second. I remember that it's a Pleasure Planet before I remember that Wesley was going to get fucking murdered.
Yeah, yeah, and as I said, the two things were happening alongside each other, and they're not mutually exclusive. But like, it's weird. It kind of they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, where they're trying to have it be a very like it takes itself very seriously kind of morality play, and then also have it be like give Roddenberry's libido a romp in the grass too.
There's a
So
bunch of men in their 30s that are seeing that episode going, I don't know which part to be happier about.
naked girls and Wesley getting killed.
Well,
Sign me up.
you're telling me this isn't the one that won the won that award? Um,
Now,
what the
now, now, to be fair, and I don't want to come across as sacrilegious or disrespectful, as bawdy as that episode was, the costume designer, I feel like I'm going to mispronounce his last name, William Ware Theiss, I think.
mhm.
He did the costumes for TOS as well. Those like very like off the shoulder toga looking like could fall down any moment outfits,
Right.
and they coined a term for it. It was the Theiss titillation theory, which is basically the more likely it looks like something is going to fall off, the sexier it is. So that
Correct.
explains a lot of his like, and again, Theiss, very talented gay costume designer, and did a great job with it. But yeah, a
So
lot of
that's
it,
that's a nice little piece of trivia as we wrap this one up. So again, anything you want to say, any way you want to shit on this before we
no,
continue?
that just about
Shits it up.
does it. Honestly,
All right, all right.
I can ease off on it. We've given it, it's taken its lumps.
So again, I think the worst one of these two was definitely Angel One.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
at least Datalore had some other things to redeem it, and this episode does too, but not nearly as much, honestly.
No, definitely not. So, I sorry, I'm chuckling to myself. Reading the summary on Wikipedia, it says this is Angel One, set in the 24th century. The series follows the adventures of the Starfleet crew of the Federation Starship Enterprise D, and it's like Riker definitely knows about that D. Am I right? Oh snap!
Angel One needs the D.
So yes, that was a very that was bad. So just that is a bad thing that happened. Anyway, so as we're wrapping this one up, I want to thank you all so much for listening to What the Trek, and I don't know where we're gonna go from here. I know we're gonna go from here. Next time you see us, we're gonna most likely be talking about 10000110001 and Too Short a Season. Now that's unless, of course, Anthony and I are talking about a TOS episode, in which case that'll be fun. But I have a feeling next time it'll probably just be John and I talking about those two episodes that I'm sure are going to be so much better than these two.
And speaking of a discussion of it, we mentioned the things being too binary. I didn't know the half of it.
Yeah, right. Waka waka. All right,
And
so
that's my good night, everybody.
that's as good. All right, love you all. Take care. Good night, everybody.